Wow. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Caroline. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the great Caroline Mulroney. And I think that we all agree that you and your brothers are carrying on the incredible Mulroney legacy of fighting for Canada, whether serving in business or in law or now in government. The Mulroney name lives on as a legendary force for good in our national conversation. Thank you very much. And she is the president of the Treasury Board, so of course if you hear me say the president today, of course I'm talking about Caroline Mulroney. There's another president, but this is the one we love the most. Your father, of course, was a great inspiration to all of us. He founded free trade between Canada and the U.S., and boy, I wish I could pick up the phone and seek his advice right now. But I'm sure he'd be very proud of all Canadians, how they've rushed to the defense of our sovereignty and our economy. Canadians feel angry and betrayed and anxious after the President's unprovoked attacks on our sovereignty. We're left wondering how we can end the paralyzing uncertainty and what the future holds. We don't know what today's tariff announcement will bring, how long they will last, or what they will do. But whatever President Trump does, a bunch of things remain undeniably true. One, these tariffs are unjustified. Two, they will hurt people and businesses on both sides of the border. And three, Canada will obviously never be the 51st state. But we need a plan going forward, a plan that is both strong and effective. And I want to break that down into three parts. Obviously, one, we need an immediate response. Two, we need to tackle the dispute after the election, hopefully to bring it to an end. But three, perhaps most important of all, we need a long-term plan to build our economic fortress in Canada so we are never vulnerable to these kinds of threats again. First, our immediate response must be targeted reciprocal tariffs, targeted narrowly at those American goods we don't need, can make ourselves, or buy elsewhere to maximize impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on ourselves. Secondly, we must be prepared to protect jobs. Keeping Canadians working should be our top priority. And that's why we need to focus on maintaining the link. If a worker loses his job, it's much harder, longer, and actually more expensive for the government to try and get him back into employment than it is to try and keep him working in the interim period while this dispute is on. The Conservative government, if elected at the end of this month, will launch a Keeping Canadians Working Fund, a targeted temporary loan program for businesses that are directly hit, helping them keep workers on the job. Very similar to the type of program that John Baird initiated when we were in the Harper government during the great global recession. Binding people to their jobs, keeping their paychecks going while we can get through this trade dispute will help keep the horizon bright and keep our economy stable. But where do we go from there? The second part of the plan is we have to try to end this trade dispute. There's no guarantee, but we have to try. On day one as Prime Minister, I will propose to the President to accelerate renegotiations of CUSMA, bringing in a new deal on trade and security. CUSMA must be renegotiated anyway, next year. Why wait? Why not get it done now? Why not end the uncertainty that is paralyzing both sides of the border and that is also costing us jobs today? We should set a firm date to finalize a new deal. And I will propose that both countries pause tariffs while we hammer out that deal. Keeping destructive tariffs in place kills jobs on both sides of the border, and so serves no purpose at all. It does not make sense to go on killing jobs, disrupting markets, and weakening both our economies with on-again, off-again tariffs for months on end, as Canadian businesses and workers live in paralyzed terror. In the meantime, during negotiations, suspension of tariffs would have to go both ways. Either they take them off or we would not. We would require this to be fully reciprocal as we work towards getting a deal. And as for the deal itself, any good negotiator would tell you that he wouldn't put his cards on the table before sitting down to talk. But Canadians do have a right to know what our red lines are. As I said, Canadians have the right to know what red lines I will draw in order to protect our country in these inevitable negotiations that any future Prime Minister will have and have quickly. So let me be clear. First, I will protect our control over our border, our security, our resources, our farmers, including our supply-managed farmers, our fresh water, our automotive workers. Also, we will protect our sovereignty, our laws, our currency, our dollar, our land, our waters, our sky, our culture, our official languages, and our resources and Indigenous rights will not be under the control of any other country. This is non-negotiable. We will protect Canada's sovereignty in any negotiations. Second, for years, the Americans have demanded we do more in defense. But the truth is, Canadians have been demanding exactly the same thing. And so I will commit that any extra revenue generated from expanded trade with the United States will go right into our armed forces. We will hit our 2%. We will take back control of our Arctic waters from the Chinese and the Russians. We will rebuild our military and will become a truly sovereign nation with a strong armed forces that can protect us. We will not do this to please President Trump. We will do it because it is right for Canada, especially in light of America's growing ambivalence towards NATO. It is important for Canada to step up and show its strength. Canada will carry its own weight. We will secure the North. We will put more boots on the ground, submarines and ships in the sea, and planes in the air. Americans will be able to sleep sound at night, knowing that we fully defend our North. It will also allow us to improve NORAD to deter, detect, and destroy incoming threats to our shared security. Third, while we will agree to work with the Americans to secure our border on fentanyl and illegal migration, I'll also demand that they do their part to stop sending illegal guns across our border that kill our people. Now, how do we ensure that President Trump keeps his side of the bargain? How can we trust that he'll honor any new agreement when, let's be honest, he violated the last one, the one he negotiated? Well, that's the situation we're now in. We must make sure that the next deal has commitments that we make on defense, border cooperation, and market access that we can withdraw if and when he decides to break the deal and tariff us again. We will hold up our end of the bargain only as long as he holds up his. That is how we create the leverage to protect against a president suddenly changing his mind and breaking his word. Well, we can't control what the president does. My father isn't a particularly religious man, but he did teach me the Serenity Prayer. God help me to accept the things I cannot change, change the things I can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And we know that we can't control the decisions the president makes, but we know we can control the decisions we make about our own destiny here at home. the President will have a fork in the road. Either he'll continue to hold the threat of tariffs over our heads for the next 3.5 years, or we'll secure a deal that provides permanent relief to our economies now paralyzed by uncertainty. We don't know which way he'll go, so Canada must be prepared either way. A renewed trade deal with the Americans would be ideal, but it's not the entire solution to our economy. A credible plan to deal with Trump must prepare Canada for growth with or without reliable trade with the Americans. Unfortunately, after the lost Liberal decade, we are in an unprecedented position of weakness. Our economy is stagnant. Our workers are poor. Our industry has been left exposed to President Trump's threats. And let's be clear about this. We have had the single worst growth of any country in the G7 over the last Liberal decade. The worst part of that growth happened while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. In fact, our per capita GDP is smaller than it was 5 years ago, while the American per capita GDP has grown by 18%. We are projected to have the slowest growth of all of the nearly 40 OECD nations, and that is after 10 years of the Liberals in power. In the first 14 years of this century, Canada had a net investment of American dollars in Canada of about $30 to $100 billion, depending on the year. Right now, after the last Liberal decade, there are $500 billion more Canadian dollars invested in America than the reverse. At this big pivotal moment, I think Canadians have to ask a question. Why is Donald Trump so supportive of Mark Carney? Why has Trump anointed Carney the winner of the next election? Do you think it's because Trump has Canada's best interests at heart when he says that he'd rather negotiate with a Liberal government? Or is he thinking about what he can get at Canada's expense? Here's what I think. Donald Trump knows that a fourth Liberal term under Mark Carney will make Canada even weaker and poorer than it was over the last decade, more dependent on American markets and vulnerable to his threats. He knows Mr. Carney is opposed to turning Canada into an energy superpower. He knows that Liberal agenda blocking energy production and pipeline construction will keep Donald Trump's thumb over our economy. In fact, Mr. Carney actually said, and I'm quoting here, more than 80% of current fossil fuel reserves would need to stay in the ground. Now, obviously, he means Canadian oil reserves. There would be more oil produced south of the border, profiting the Americans and making us weaker and more reliant. Trump knows that Mr. Carney will keep Justin Trudeau's industrial carbon tax on Canadian industry, as well as Trudeau's cap on Canadian energy, driving business south. And just yesterday, Mark Carney gave a wonderful gift to Donald Trump. He announced he will keep the Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69 in place. Bill C-69 guarantees there will never again be a pipeline, LNG plant, large-scale mine, or nuclear project built in this country. It will send hundreds of billions of dollars fleeing south of the border to Trump's America and force us to continue to sell our oil and gas at massive price discounts. When you consider that Mark Carney's Keep It in the Ground agenda will make us even more dependent on the United States, it becomes pretty clear why Trump wants the Liberals to win a fourth term. The last thing that President Trump wants is a strong Canadian Prime Minister who will turn this country around, turning our country into an economic and resource powerhouse with competitive taxes that is open for business. That might not be good for President Trump, but it is exactly how you put Canada first. The choice in the next election is clear. After the lost Liberal decade, can we afford a fourth term of rising costs and crime and falling economy under America's thumb? Or is it time for a change with a new Conservative government that will put Canada first, a government that will unleash our resources, cut taxes for our workers, bring home our jobs, and stand up to the Americans from a position of strength? That's the decision. That's the decision. And that part we do control. Only we control our natural resources, our tax policy, our competitiveness, and whether Canadians keep more of what they earn and save. The story of Canada is a story of doing big things, of ambitious projects that bind the nation together, uniting us as a people and securing our sovereignty. That's what Brian Mulroney did when he negotiated free trade. That's what John A. Macdonald did with the railway. Canada was not handed to our ancestors. They had to work and sacrifice for it. And whether we were born here or chose to come, we are their heirs. And we have a duty to defend what our ancestors gave us, to build an even better Canada to leave to our children. That is our purpose. That is what we will do. We need our country to think big again. It's time to challenge ourselves, because decline is a choice, but it's not my choice. I choose to build. I choose to grow. I choose to meet the moment with ambition worthy of the men and women who built this great country. My plan for the Canadian economy could not be more different than what you've seen over the lost Liberal decade of Carney and Trudeau. I've spent the first week of this campaign setting out ambitious and detailed plans to build our economy so we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up against foreign threats. It's everything we should have been doing for the last 10 years, everything I said we should do over the last 10 years, and everything that Mark Carney has explicitly opposed over the last 10 years. In the first week of this campaign, I've laid out clear and detailed plans to relaunch our economy and take back control of our economic destiny. I've announced that we will cut income taxes by 15% to reward hard work and give our people a chance to get ahead. I've announced the Canada First reinvestment tax cut. Zero capital gains tax when you reinvest the proceeds building Canada right here at home. Think about this. Think about this right now. There is currently no incentive, if you sell an investment today, to reinvest it in Canada. You pay the same capital gains tax if you reinvest here versus sending it abroad. And in fact, because the taxes on your later investment are lower abroad, the business taxes and other taxes, there is a perverse incentive to ship money away. And that's why so much investment has left. Then there's the lock-in effect. Countless people hold on to tired old assets that they'd love to dispose of, but would face a walloping tax bill. So instead of disposing of it to someone who can do something better with it and using the proceeds to build new homes, launch a new factory, buy a new CNC machine or a conveyor belt, or launch a new technology, the money just sits dead. That's the lock-in effect. By allowing Canadians to sell existing investments and immediately reinvest it here in Canada, it will be like economic rocket fuel, launching our economy above and beyond the Americans, turning this into a dynamic, free market economy where we can show our strength and reward success. We want to reward hard work. Our seniors are punished if they choose on their own behest to go out and work. They get clawed back and taxed away. We'll let them earn up to $34,000 tax-free so that there's actually a benefit to sharing their wisdom and their contributions with our economy. And we will create Canada shovel-ready zones, areas that are pre-permitted for construction before we even receive an application. The way it will work is that online we will publish the standards and specs required to build power stations, pipelines, LNG plants, and more, but with permits that are already legally binding and granted, so that companies don't have to sit around for 7 years tying up billions of dollars of capital, something that has dissuaded them from being here. After the Liberals killed $178 billion of projects, many companies won't even try. But if they have pre-permitting and absolute certainty, they can get to work and get their shovels in the ground. One of those projects will be the Ring of Fire. I pledge to grant permits for the Ring of Fire within 6 months of becoming Prime Minister. And we'll partner with President Mulroney and the team in the Ontario government to build that road so we can actually move the goods back and forth. I talked to a First Nations chief from up north who wants the Ring of Fire, and I said, "Are the shovels in the ground?" He said, "The snow shovels." He said they've been waiting 5 years and spent $50 million on federal permitting for a road. Forget the mine itself. Let's get these delays out of the way. As the great Bob Stanfield said, let's stop stopping and start starting. One example is the 14 biggest energy and resource companies wrote a letter to all of the federal leaders. And they said there's 5 things we need if you want us to make Canada economically independent from the Americans. 5 specific asks. 1, you need to repeal the No New Pipelines Law, C-69, and the tanker ban so we can ship our oil overseas. My answer? Yes. 2, grant decisions on major projects within 6 months rather than 17 years. My answer? Yes. 3, scrap the energy cap that will limit the amount of oil and gas we can produce while allowing foreign polluting countries to have an unlimited dominance in markets. So scrap the energy cap? My answer? Yes. 4, they said we must axe the industrial carbon tax, which makes it impossible for us to compete with Americans who have no such tax. Axe the industrial carbon tax? My answer is yes. And give Indigenous loan guarantees to help First Nations take equity positions and profit from the projects that happen on their land? My answer, again, is yes. Yesterday in St. John's, I committed to all 5 of these things. Mr. Carney has said he will do none of them. Expanding our energy production and exports is the single most powerful thing we can do to break our dependence on the Americans. And that is the very single thing that Mark Carney has explicitly said he will not do. So what is his plan? A resume is not a plan. Nor is continuing with the same policies that got us into this mess in the first place. In fact, he wants to put the Liberal policies on steroids. His housing plan, I don't know if you saw this earlier this week, he wants to create a government-run construction company that is going to make prefab tiny homes with no parking spots. This is his idea for housing. This is even more radical than the stuff that came from Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau over the last 10 years. This is not a serious plan to protect our economy and break our dependence. We need a serious nation-building plan to Trump-proof our economy. Mine will put Canada first. It is a plan for Canada that is richer and stronger than the one the Liberals left us. A plan to protect Canada from whatever choices, wrong choices, the President might make. So my message to President Trump is this: if you keep attacking our economy, over the next 4 years, under my Conservative government, Canada will become completely rebuilt as an economy that no longer is reliant on the Americans for everything. You will have lost your greatest trading partner and best friend. We will be a confident and strong country capable of standing on its own 2 feet, standing up to anybody that gets in our way, and moving forward to give our people back the Canadian promise. The only thing we can control is the things that we do at home. And the best way is to unleash our industry, cut taxes on our workers, bring zero capital gains taxes for our Canadian reinvestment, build more pipelines, LNG plants, power plants, data centers. That is the only way to actually stand up to the U.S. President. All these things I've talked about for the last 10 years, all these things Mark Carney has consistently opposed. All of these things are required to move forward. But we have to remember why we're doing these things. The point of these trade and resource and tax policies is not to win a debate in a faculty club or an economic seminar. What use is it to have a booming economy if our cities are unaffordable, unsafe, and increasingly unlivable? Some Liberal supporters and lobbyists have asked why I keep talking about the cost of living, housing, crime, and about the Liberal drug crisis instead of focusing exclusively on Donald Trump. My answer is this. The threat of the President's actions against Canada are serious, and I've proposed serious answers to those threats. But the struggles that Canadians are facing at home, the fear and the hurt that I hear everywhere across this land, those are real too. And I will not stop talking about these problems which predate Donald Trump and which will outlast Donald Trump if we do not act to fix them. Everyone is struggling with the cost of living. Young Canadians are stressed about never affording a home, bills they can't afford. Their parents worry that they might overdose, their children might overdose on fentanyl. And even those who are not afflicted with that scourge wonder how they'll ever move out of their parents' basement and have kids. Millions of Canadians have been living for years in what I call lives of quiet desperation. Their stories rarely make the evening news. So yes, I will be out there every day, outlining my plan to protect Canada against American tariffs. But I will also unapologetically be out there talking about my plan to build more homes, get people off drugs and into recovery, fix the budget, keep inflation down, cap immigration so we never add more people than health care, jobs, and housing, get criminals off the street. We can do all of these things. We must do all of these things at the same time as we stand up to President Trump from a position of strength. Because that's what a Prime Minister does. Now, what the Liberals would like you to do is forget about all the damage they did over the last 10 years. They want you to forget the lost Liberal decade. They want you to forget that it's exactly the same Liberal ministers, same Liberal MPs, same Liberal strategists making the same broken Liberal promises. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change to put Canada first. We will get that change. We will be a strong, self-reliant nation that takes care of its own and bows down before no country. Not a nation of tax collectors and toll masters, of bureaucrats and busybodies, of gatekeepers and grandees, of rulers and rule makers. No, we are a nation of explorers and entrepreneurs, artists and adventurers, workers and warriors, pioneers and patriots. Canada is much more than just not being American. It is about our shared values, our culture, our shared history, and the enduring promise that Canada made to each and every one of us. The promise that brought my wife here as a refugee from Venezuela. Why would she leave a beautiful tropical country to come to a place where it snows in the middle of April? The answer is because this country offered the incredible promise that 6 people crammed into a basement East End Montreal apartment could work their way to a successful life, that she, with that humble beginning, could stand next to the son of a teenage mother adopted by 2 school teachers to be on this stage. We owe it to this country. My family owes this country everything we have, and therefore we have a duty to protect the same promise for those who will come after us. Canada needs a change to restore its promise. Canada is ready for that change. I am ready to lead that change. I am ready to be Prime Minister for our people, for our land, for Canada first, for a change. Let's bring it home. Thank you very much.